There's a reason most people never reach their dreams. It's not because they aren't smart enough. It's not because life didn't give them a chance. It's because they quit right before something beautiful was about to happen. Consistency. The quiet, invisible force that separates dreamers from achievers. It doesn't shine. It doesn't shout. It doesn't promise results overnight. But it changes everything, slowly, silently, and powerfully. This is the story of a man who learned that lesson the hard way. A man who started with nothing, failed 100 times, and almost gave up until he discovered what real consistency means. His journey will remind you that the life you want isn't built in a day. It's built one small, consistent step at a time. Ethan Miller was 32 years old when he finally realized his life was stuck on repeat. Every morning he woke up with the same fire in his chest, a fire that burned bright for a few days, maybe a week, then vanished into the same gray routine. He wanted success. He wanted freedom. But deep down, he wanted them fast. He'd tried everything, starting a YouTube channel, trading crypto, writing a book, even going to the gym religiously for a week. But every time he hit a wall, every time results didn't come quick enough, he convinced himself it just wasn't meant to be. Then, he'd quit. Ethan lived alone in a small apartment on the edge of Chicago, the kind of place that smelled like old coffee and quiet frustration. His walls were covered with sticky notes, new goals, big plans. Millionaire by 35, each one written with energy that never lasted more than a few days. One rainy evening, Ethan sat by his window, watching cars blur under the streetlights. His laptop screen was still open to another unfinished project. The silence pressed against his chest like a weight. How many times am I gonna start over? He muttered to himself. He scrolled through his phone, motivational videos, success quotes, gym selfies, all showing people who seemed to have it figured out. He felt a sting of envy, mixed with exhaustion. He wanted that kind of life, the one where you wake up proud of yourself. That night he couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m. he grabbed his hoodie and walked down to a small diner that stayed open all night. The kind of place where old men drank coffee like it was medicine and the waitress knew everyone's order by heart. He sat in the corner booth, sipping black coffee, lost in thought. That's when he noticed an older man sitting a few tables away, maybe in his late 60s. He was writing in a small notebook, slowly, deliberately, like every word mattered. His hands were steady, his focus unbroken. Ethan kept glancing at him, curious. After a few minutes, the old man looked up and smiled. "You look like someone trying to figure life out," he said, voice calm and kind. Ethan laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there," the man replied. He closed his notebook and leaned forward. "You want something, don't you? Something big?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, success. I just don't know how to stay consistent. I start things, but I lose motivation fast. Then I hate myself for it." The man smiled again, this time with a kind of knowing sadness. "Motivation fades. It's like caffeine. It keeps you going for a while, then you crash. Consistency is what keeps you alive after the crash." Ethan frowned. "Easier said than done, of course," the man said. "That's why most people never learn it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old coin, silver, smooth, worn by time. He placed it on the table between them. "See this? My father gave me this coin when I was 20. Told me to flip it every day. Not because it was lucky, but to remind me that every day gives you a choice. Stay the same or move 1 inch forward. I've flipped it for 45 years now. And it's the inches, not the miles, that built my life." Ethan looked at the coin, silent. The man's words hit something deep inside him, a kind of quiet truth that hurt because it was so simple. "What do you do?" Ethan asked. The man smiled again. "I build furniture, one table at a time, one chair at a time. Nothing special, nothing viral, but I've done it every day since I was your age. That's why people come from miles away to buy from me." He picked up his notebook, stood and placed a few bills on the table. "You can do anything, son, but not if you keep restarting. Pick something. Do it badly, do it slowly, but do it every day." Then he left. Ethan sat there for a long time, staring at the coin still lying on the table. It wasn't magic, but somehow, it felt heavier than it should have been, like it carried the weight of everything he'd been avoiding. He slipped it into his pocket and walked home. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement like tiny reminders of movement, one step at a time. When he got home, he opened his laptop again. The cursor blinked on the same unfinished project. This time, he didn't overthink it. He just started typing. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 turned into an hour. He didn't care if it was perfect, he just wanted to finish something for once. At 4 a.m., he closed his laptop and sat back. For the first time in years, he felt something different, not excitement, not motivation, but peace. That night, before sleeping, Ethan took the coin out of his pocket and placed it on his nightstand. Then he whispered quietly, "Just 1 inch tomorrow." He didn't know it yet, but that single inch was about to change everything. The next morning, sunlight leaked through Ethan's blinds, cutting across his face. He woke up later than planned, groggy but still remembering what he'd promised himself, just 1 inch. He looked at the coin resting on his nightstand. For a moment, he almost laughed. What difference could 1 inch make? But something inside him told him to try. He brewed coffee, opened his laptop, and stared at the blank screen. His project, an online fitness blog he'd started months ago, had always felt impossible to finish. But this time, he didn't think about finishing it. He only thought about moving 1 inch forward. He wrote for 30 minutes. Not perfect words, but honest ones. Then he closed his laptop, smiled faintly, and whispered, "That's enough for today." It was strange. For once, he didn't feel like a failure for stopping early. He felt consistent. The next day, he did the same thing. And the day after that. Some days he wrote more, some days less. But he showed up. No goals, no pressure, no grind till you die attitude, just a quiet promise to keep the chain unbroken. Weeks passed. His blog began to take shape. Nothing viral, nothing glamorous. But it existed, something he'd created with patience instead of adrenaline. Still, the battle wasn't over. There were mornings when he didn't want to move, when the voice in his head whispered, "What's the point? No one's even reading this." He'd stare at the ceiling, tempted to quit again. But every time, he'd hear the old man's voice, "Pick something. Do it badly, do it slowly, but do it every day." So, he'd roll out of bed, flip the coin, and open his laptop. Sometimes, he'd only write one paragraph, but he kept going. Consistency, he was learning, isn't about motivation, it's about showing up when you don't feel like it. One rainy afternoon, as he sat by the same window, Ethan received an email from a stranger. "Hey man, I've been reading your blog. I'm 21, trying to lose weight and figure out my life. Your honesty about failing and starting over really hit me. Please keep writing." Ethan read it twice, then he just sat there staring at the screen. It wasn't fame, it wasn't money, but it was impact. Someone had read his words and they mattered. He felt a warmth spread through him, quiet but real. Maybe this was what he'd been chasing all along, not recognition, but purpose. That night, he walked back to the diner. The same corner booth, the same smell of coffee and rain, but the old man wasn't there. The seat was empty. He waited for a while, hoping he'd walk in. He didn't, so Ethan opened his notebook, a new habit he'd started, and began writing down the things he was learning about consistency. You don't need to feel ready to begin. Progress hides behind boredom. 1 inch every day beats 1 mile once a month. As he wrote, he smiled to himself. This wasn't just about the blog anymore. It was about life. How everything great is built in quiet moments when no one's watching. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's blog started gaining slow traction. His routine became steady. Write in the morning, walk in the evening, sleep on time. It wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful. One evening, as he walked through the park, he passed a group of young guys talking loudly about quick success and instant money. He smiled, recognizing his younger self in their words. He wanted to tell them what he now knew. That consistency feels boring until it starts paying off. But he stayed silent. Some lessons can't be told, they have to be lived. Back home, he looked at the coin again. It had begun to lose some of its shine from daily use. He liked that. The fading metal felt symbolic proof that time and effort were shaping both the coin and him. But then came the hardest part, the plateau. After 6 months of steady progress, growth slowed, views dropped, comments stopped. For the first time in a long while, he felt invisible again. He told himself it didn't matter, but deep down, it did. Every morning, his motivation sank a little lower. He started missing days, making excuses. "I'll catch up tomorrow," but tomorrow never came. One night, after nearly a week of silence, he sat in bed, coin in hand, frustration boiling inside. "What's the point of being consistent?" he whispered, "if nothing changes?" The room stayed quiet, but in his mind, he saw the old man again, calm, steady, flipping that coin without fail. Maybe this was the real test, not the beginning, but the middle. When progress slows and nobody claps, when you have to keep going without reward. Ethan took a deep breath. He stood up, walked to his desk, and opened his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He didn't know what to write, so he just wrote the truth. I don't feel motivated tonight. I'm tired, but I promised myself I'd write something, so here I am. That simple post got more response than anything he'd written before. People commented things like, "Thank you for being real, and this is exactly how I feel." He realized then, consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means honesty. It means showing up even when you're tired, broken, or lost. Before sleeping, Ethan looked at the coin again. Tomorrow, he said quietly, another inch. He didn't know it yet, but that inch would soon pull him into a moment that would change his entire life. A year had passed since Ethan met the old man in that quiet diner. The seasons had turned, and so had he. His apartment was still small, his life still simple, but something deep inside him had shifted. His mornings had rhythm now. Coffee, writing, walk, repeat. His days no longer felt wasted. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but for the first time, he was stable. Still, success had been slow. Some nights he wondered if he'd ever get noticed, if the world would ever see the effort he put in when nobody was watching. But then he'd flip the coin and remind himself, 1 inch a day, that's all it takes. One cold December evening, Ethan sat hunched over his laptop, editing his latest post. Outside, snow drifted softly under the orange glow of streetlights. He'd written something different that night. Not advice, not motivation, but a confession. There were days I thought I'd never make it. Days when I hated myself for being average. But I learned something. If you show up every single day, even when no one notices, life eventually notices you back. He hit publish and closed his laptop. The next morning, he woke up to something he hadn't seen before, hundreds of notifications. His inbox was flooded. Messages, comments, shares. His latest post had gone viral overnight. People were calling it the truth about consistency. It spread across social media, shared by influencers, coaches, even a few well-known writers. Thousands of people wrote to him, saying his words had inspired them to keep going, to start again, to stop quitting. Ethan sat frozen for a moment, staring at the screen. He laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Not because he'd finally made it, but because he realized this wasn't luck. It was the reward of showing up when he didn't want to. Every inch, every quiet night, every small promise kept had built this moment. He looked around his apartment, the same room, the same walls, but everything felt different now. He wasn't the same man who used to chase shortcuts. He was the man who had learned patience, the man who had earned his peace inch by inch. Later that week, Ethan got an email from a publishing company. They wanted to turn his posts into a book. He read the message twice, smiling to himself. The title they suggested was perfect, 1 inch a day. He accepted, but what mattered more was how he felt inside. Grounded, grateful. A few months later, on a spring afternoon, Ethan stood in front of a small crowd at a community center in Chicago, giving his first talk about consistency. He wasn't a natural speaker, but he spoke with quiet confidence. He began his speech the same way the old man had spoken to him years ago. Motivation fades, he said. Consistency is what stays after the excitement dies. After his talk, a young man from the audience walked up to him, maybe 20, nervous but curious. "Hey, how do you stay consistent when it feels like nothing's working?" Ethan smiled, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the old coin. The edges were worn now, the shine long gone. He placed it in the young man's hand. "Every day, this coin reminded me I had a choice," he said softly. "Stay the same, or move 1 inch forward. Do this long enough, and you'll wake up one day in a life you built yourself." The young man looked down at the coin, speechless. Ethan just smiled, the same way the old man once had. That night, Ethan walked home under the warm glow of streetlights, the city humming softly around him. He no longer needed the coin, its lesson lived inside him now. He stopped by the same diner. It hadn't changed. The waitress was still there, and the smell of coffee filled the air. He sat in his old booth, ordered the same black coffee, and looked at the empty seat where the old man once sat. He whispered quietly, "You were right." He opened his notebook and wrote one final line for the day. Consistency doesn't just change your results, it changes you. It turns hope into habit, and habit into destiny. As he closed the notebook, he smiled to himself, not the smile of someone who'd won, but of someone who'd finally understood, because the truth is, success never arrives all at once. It sneaks up quietly, disguised as small efforts that no one sees. And that's how life changes 1 inch, one day, one consistent choice at a time. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Success doesn't come from doing big things once. It comes from doing small things every single day. Consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. So don't wait for the perfect moment, just take one small step today. And tomorrow, take another. If you found meaning in this story, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire change 1 inch at a time.